Graves. Kashana Owens Cody. Donna Bullock. Larry Malden. Myself, Marie Allen Campbell. Also with us, we have Pretty Mather, Sam Mather, Jeffrey Weiss, Marissa Zanfardino, and Dr. Lisa Hanley. And so I think,
I'm here too.
oh, and Dominic Mazza. Sorry, Nick.
That's all right.
So, I think we should start with Dr. Hanley.
You want me to just talk about my effectiveness analysis of the various plans?
Yeah, I think ArcBridge has sent you some additional data for one more plan. Did you get that?
I did, but actually ArcBridge actually did the analysis as well. They did the effectiveness analysis as well as giving me the recompiled election results.
Oh,
So you should have the, this is Plan A with Manans.
yeah, this is Plan A with Manans included.
Yeah, okay, so they include columns for the effectiveness analysis. So you didn't need me to do that. So you should have that for that plan as well. So now,
So
now
do
we should have
we have that, Pretty?
6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, when I sent it, I used Dr. Handley's spreadsheet and it was, so yeah. You should have it, the one that I sent to everyone.
Okay, let me look for it.
I sent it this morning.
This is the chart that at the top says Plan A original with Manans.
That is correct.
Okay, you may have to resend it to me because
Oh,
I'm not finding it and I know I didn't see it earlier.
yeah, it came in this morning about 10 something.
Oh, it must have disappeared out of my.
We can go ahead and share it
You
now.
know our
Oh,
email.
wait, here it is.
I can share
You
it
know
if
our
you would
email
like.
system.
So does everybody have it?
Yes,
No.
well, I do.
Yes.
I can share it if you would like.
Yes, that would be good.
Yeah, I do see it here.
And this is the same sheet that you saw yesterday. I added the original Plan A and we filled in the numbers for all the other analysis as well.
No. I think she wants the, can you do the Plan A original with Menards District instead? Of
Okay,
this one.
let me do that. Mhm.
In terms of effectiveness, this Plan A with Menards is identical to Plan A. And just in terms of effectiveness, not in terms of anything else necessarily. But although the election results are slightly different, it's still likely to elect in 5 districts and 0 additional possible districts.
I'm sorry, you said in comparison to Plan A, meaning the original A.
That's correct. The original A offers
Okay.
5 likely to elect. The Plan A with Menards whole, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but it also produces 5 likely to elect.
Well, it's actually the other way around. The original plan was the plan that went into Manans, and the revised plan was the plan that came out of Manans. So do we have this right?
Might be labeled
Okay.
wrong, but it doesn't matter from an effectiveness analysis. They're both identical.
Marie, all
right.
I did was I called it original plan A, which goes into Manans, and then I called the other one revised plan A, which does not go into Manans.
Okay, so you just need to change those headers, just so there's no confusion going forward.
Sure.
But the two plans with or without Manans doesn't change the effectiveness in that they're both likely to elect 5 minority preferred candidates.
That's correct. Now, I don't know what it does in terms of neighborhood splits. There's another chart prepared by ArcBridge that has things like neighborhood splits and compactness and deviations, and that I don't know. But in terms of effectiveness alone, it's the same.
Okay, so I have a question. And I guess it's for
Okay.
Dr. Hanley and for Jeff. Because one of the things that, that I still grapple with is the whole issue of voter dilution. And so, how do I say? Okay, so just using census data and the current plans that are in place, we end up with 3 strong majority minority districts and 2 relatively strong plurality districts. Am I saying that right, Pretty?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So, and when I say 3 strong, they're non-Hispanic, Black, more than 50%, and Hispanic population somewhere between like maybe 9 and 15 or 16% for the various districts. So with the addition of the 2 districts, those districts, none of them are majority minority districts anymore. They're all plurality districts. Am I saying that correct, Pretty?
Yeah.
Okay, they're all plurality districts. So with the racial polarized voting analysis that was done, that determined that polarized voting still exists. And because of that, there's a requirement that we ensure that we maintain those 5 districts.
Mhm.
What are the implications of those districts that were in place becoming weaker? So this is the issue that we grappled with all through this process.
What you don't want to do is draw more districts in a way that impacts the election potential of the 5 districts that exist. So you want to maintain at least 5 districts that are likely to elect, and then you can add more districts. You don't want to draw a plan that looks like it has 5 districts, but in fact, only 4 of them are likely to elect, and 1 or 2 or 3 more are less likely to elect. You want to maintain at least a 5-district plan that's likely to elect. And then if you can draw some additional districts that are likely to elect, or it's quite possible that you elect, that's good, but you want to maintain at least 5 likely to elect districts. If you draw a plan that looks like it has 7, but only 4 are likely to elect, you need to be very careful. It could be dilution. And I'm going to let the lawyer talk about
Yeah,
that.
and I would advise strongly against that. What we want to do, and I'll repeat this in my own words from what Dr. Hanley just said, we want to maintain the likely electability in 5 districts and the possibility in 2 additional districts. What we don't want to do is take the 5 districts and weaken any of them so that there'll be fewer than 5 probable elected minority preferred candidates.
So I don't think we're talking about further weakening the districts. The question on the table is that districts have been weakened as a result of us going to 7 districts. The effectiveness analysis says that we still have 5 likely and 3 scenarios with 2 possibles. And so I am just trying to make sure that we are on good footing going forward. And I'm sure that this is an issue that everyone has grappled with.
I think you're exactly right, Marie. I think you have 3 plans out there that have 5 solid likely to elect, and then some additional possibilities. There are other plans out there that actually subtract a likely to elect district and replace it with a possible to elect district. But you do have 3 plans out there that are solid 5 likely to elect plus additional districts.
So my read of that shows, looking at the analysis we've been working with, that Plan A simply remains at 5. Plan B goes down from down to 3 likely and 4. No, I'm sorry, and 3 possible. Plan C gives us 5 likely and 2 possible, as do Dull, June, and Pope.
Okay, Donna, you were gonna say something before?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Does Plan A revised, Plan A revised does not include Manans, correct?
The original plan included Manans.
But that Plan A, I'm seeing with you're all right, but Plan A revised, it has 5 likely.
Does not include Manans.
And blank
Both plan,
possible does
both,
not include Manans.
but both the revised and the Manans plan does include, I mean, they both are identical in terms of likely to elect. They might be different in terms of the
I
other
just-
columns.
But
What
it's
is the
still 5.
problem? What is the problem with Plan A revised that does not include Manans? It has 5 likely districts, and it has 2 more that are blank, I guess. They don't fall into the possible category.
That's right. That's the difference.
What that is
Yeah.
that is the difference, correct? But what is the problem with that? Other than you've got 2 with 5, 3 with 5, they have 2 possibles. But if what I heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, as long as you maintain the 5, it's okay to draw more districts as MMDs, even though they may not fall into the possible category.
Well, the problem is that Plan A doesn't draw any additional districts. It does maintain the 5 that you have, but there are other plans that not only maintain the 5 that you
I
have.
thought the revised plan had 7 districts in it, 7 MMDs.
No.
Well, it may, but they are not effective. So,
But that's not my
No,
question.
and the Plan A maps only have 5 districts. There was a District 7 included that was, I guess, deemed not really,
Effective.
Well, discussion was about Asians. if I remember correctly.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
initially it was deemed to be a plurality.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other question I have for you, Dr. Hanley, can you explain that effectiveness column to us again?
Yes, the effectiveness column is based solely on the election results. So it doesn't look at the demographics. It doesn't look at anything other than what we predict would happen based on previous election results. So if the candidates of choice actually would win that district, it's not likely to elect district. If it does at least as well as they did in the current district, it's also a likely to elect district. If it doesn't do as well, then it becomes a possible district. So there are a number of instances in which there are districts that may be plurality or even majority minority districts, but because of the election results, it suggests that they are not as effective as the current districts. And so those fall under possible. And if they don't do even as well as, I mean, even worse than that, then I don't even count them.
So are the numbers better that are higher or lower?
What you want is you want it under the column total likely to elect. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth column, you want at least 5 because the current plan offers 5. So in my mind, things like Plan B7 and Plan D6 are not as good because they don't have districts that are solid. They don't have 5 solid districts. Now, then the question becomes, some like original Plan A and Plan A with Menards, and those are comparable to the current plan. But there are other plans like Plans C7 and Plan Dahl, June, and Pope that actually offer 5 solid districts plus districts that are possible to elect minority preferred candidates. In my mind, you would avoid retrogression by choosing any plan that has a 5 under total likely to elect, and you would be expanding minority opportunity by selecting a district that has 5 under likely to elect and something more than 0 under possible to elect.
And in a city or county where we have racially polarized voting, the failure to create 2 additional possible districts could be seen by a court as violating the Voting Rights Act for the failure to create the requisite number of districts because all of the Voting Rights Act tests have been met.
I mean, is that true? Even if the creation of additional districts weakens the strength of the existing districts?
To the point of the total likely to elect, those are the districts that are not weakened. So, for example, in Plan C, you still have 5 strong districts. So there's nothing that's been weakened there. You have 5 districts.
You still have your 5 districts.
You've just added another possible 2. On the other hand, Plan B, which also offers 7 districts on its face, weakens one of the districts enough so that you've only got 4 possible to elect. And I mean, 4 likely to elect and 3 possible.
And that's likely to violate the Voting Rights Act. So, again, to keep it in the simplest terms, we need to keep 5 viable, effective districts. And because this whole city area is subject to, as witnessed, vote dilution, it's best to, again, maintain 5 effective districts, and within the city of Albany area, create 2 additional districts because you've met the polarized voting tests. And from what we've discussed, plans C, Dole, June, and Pope best offer the plans to comply with the Voting Rights Act in a vote dilution situation, which is what we've got here. And this kind of a plan is least likely to be challenged and most likely to survive a challenge.
So Jeff, I wanted to ask you I have one question for you. And that is, you said that if we were to go with just the 5 districts and not with the 7 districts, it will be a violation of the voting.
It could be. And this is an issue the Supreme Court is looking at over the failure of 2 states to draw additional minority districts.
Because in many ways, if you go with 7, you may be diluting. On the chart, it looks good that we have 5 possible.
Well,
but
I think
none of them are majority.
I think we've heard Dr. Hanley say that by going with C or Dole, June, or Pope, we're not going to dilute those 5 districts.
Plus, we're creating 2 additional. So there are
Right.
7 districts. And the way that you're counting, Sam, we're counting differently. We're saying what's a solid district, because we don't want to detract from any of the districts, plus where there are additional districts. So you have labeled Pope 7 as 7, and in fact, it's got 5 solid and 2 possible. You have to distinguish between what's likely to elect and what's possible. So if you want to combine them together, then Pope 7 is 7, but something else like Plan B, which you would label as 7, is not really 7. It's a 3-4. So it's a decrease, not a gain.
Correct.
I'm basing
Oh,
my argument on the fact that I'm looking at effectiveness is one of the items. I'm looking at the population percentage. So in the 5 district map, there are at least 3 districts which are majority. So that makes it stronger.
Absolutely not. There were whole court cases about whether majority is enough. And Texas did something very clever once. They took a majority Hispanic district and they kept it majority. They moved out people who didn't vote with people who did vote. So do not look at just the population demographics. And on top of that, that's unconstitutional.
Right. We've said this a number of times. 50%, whatever the numbers are, don't matter. It's effectiveness. It's avoiding a 4th decade of Albany County Voting Rights Act violations. And the way to do that is to use the tests that the courts require and the courts accept, and to maintain 5 districts. Although it was 7 years ago with different census data, Judge Kahn ordered 5 districts. Those 5 districts are still maintainable under the Voting Rights Act. And because there's a high level of polarized voting in the county, we can create an additional 2 districts that are likely to elect. Not a guarantee, but you do the best you can. And failure to do that could land the county in another lawsuit where it can lose for the failure to maintain 5 districts and create 2 more.
That's for everyone. So I know Dr. Handley and Jeff, both of you have emphasized that enough, but I just wanted to just show the numbers one more time here. This is the original Plan A, which goes into Manans, and we have 3 majority and 2 plurality non-Hispanic Black districts based totally on population. And this is the column. So this is one just for everyone's benefit I'm doing because this question is coming up again. So here we have 3 majority and we have 2 strong plurality non-Hispanic Black districts. But if we look at Hispanic and non-Hispanic Black, it's a different situation. We get into a stronger 60s, 60 plus.
But the numbers don't matter compared to the effectiveness. You can have 100% district that might not work hypothetically. It's the effectiveness. That's what the courts look at. That's why this commission was partially created, and that's why I think your subcommittee was created, to comply with the Voting Rights Act, not to comply with 50 or 60 or 70% numbers.
Well, we've also had public comments that have commented that the strength of the districts is diluted, and like in our map Plan D.
But these comments were
districts were diluted.
But Maria, that's right. When you look at a Plan D, we do see that there's only 4 likely to elect, plus 2 additional. So I don't know what the public was keying in on. Probably not my numbers, but I agree.
Definitely not numbers because they haven't seen those.
I mean, frankly, at this point,
Were they possibly looking at an ACRC map?
It was a part of the final map that was produced for the public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like there was one comment that said in District 2 and District 6, we diluted the voting strength of minorities by decreasing the percent of the minority population and increasing the percent of the non-white population.
Yeah.
Another point to mention here is, Marie, is that we also brought in another variable, the DOJ variable.
I'm having a hard time hearing you,
Which
Sam.
increased a little bit.
Yes, Sam, could you speak up, please?
What happened?
Speak up.
Oh, so what I'm saying is the other thing about, population is that we also brought the DOJ variable, which was basically just to increase if possible, to increase the population percentage. So, that's also I believe the courts look at as well.
And then there's other numbers that are like a wild card that are not really reflected because there's other combinations of races that we haven't looked at.
Sam is exactly right that the GOJ numbers are important, but they're important from the perspective of what's called a voting rights claim under Thornburg v. Jingles, to prove that you could draw an additional 50% district. It doesn't go to effectiveness, but it does go to whether you would meet a jingle standard under the Voting Rights Act.
And
so it is an important
when you have Right, when you have a situation that where you don't have minority districts, the Supreme Court has required that you have at least 50% minority population as a threshold. That's at the front end. But once those districts are effectively electing minority preferred candidates, that 50% threshold to draw the first district need not be 50% plus anymore. It could be 48%.
Just to complicate things further, if you already have an effective district, it can go below 50%.
Right.
If you want to sue for an additional district, you have to show that you can draw
Right.
a 50% above,
Right.
50% using the DOJ numbers. So it's
But here we have a situation in Albany
Say
County.
that again, because I mean,
You're breaking up,
Sorry.
Dr. Hanley.
We
Dr.
have-
Hanley, you were breaking up when you were explaining that.
I was saying it's complicated because if you already have effective districts, those are allowed to go below 50%. It's only to prove to the court that you could draw an additional district that you go to the DOJ 50% rule. So it's an important number to keep in mind.
The DOJ 50% rule.
What that means is that you don't just count those people who marked Black on their census form and nothing else. It means that you have to count everybody who at least marked Black, and if the other race was white and white. In other words, it's a more inclusive definition of what Black voting age population is.
And I think no matter what you decide,
Well, we don't have
the five districts.
We don't have anything that defines that additional districts that we drew meet that 50% threshold.
So
Based
you're
on what you
suggesting that,
said, Dr. Hanley.
That doesn't mean that you have to draw them that way. It simply means that if somebody was going to challenge the plan, they'd have to show that in addition to the districts that you drew, it was possible to draw yet another district that was at least 50% Black in voting age population using the DOJ figures. If you adopted a plan that had 5 likely to elect and 2 possible, there's no way somebody could draw yet another district. So you're pretty safe.
Jeff, you were saying something?
yeah, well, I think Lisa just essentially answered that question, but from a public policy perspective, looking at the city of Albany as it is, Plan C, June Dahl and the Poe plan will effectively keep 5 districts that will, with all the numbers that are available, that are humanly and statistically possible, give you the 5 districts. And as a good public policy initiative, creating 2 additional districts that are likely to elect minority candidates would be a laudable thing for you to do and avoid liability. Creating districts that simply are 50% plus or 60% plus and create only 4 districts will land the county in court with a problem that will be very hard, if not impossible, to defend.
So our decision, the number 1 priority is the effectiveness test. That's the priority we start with. And then if all the other things fall in place, that's just extra.
I think that that's right. I think as I look at these plans, there are 3 plans that clearly offer 5 districts that are very likely to elect and 2 districts that are additional. And how you would decide between those would be you would go to all these additional factors other than the Voting Rights Act. You would look at things like population deviations and compactness and neighborhood splits.
All right,
What about municipality split?
And that's where we left off yesterday.
Well, we've got, of the three that are being promoted, C7, correct? Dahl, June 7, and Pope
And Pope.
7, right? Two of those include 3 municipalities. One of those includes 2. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Based
Thank
on
you.
the discussion,
Let me, and
I'm sorry, go
So-
ahead.
no, it's okay, Donna, no problem. So if I, for example, were to think that splitting municipalities is something we want to minimize. Now, other people may not care about that, but theoretically, if we were to believe that splitting less municipalities is preferable, where does that fall in line with effectiveness when I start looking at those percentages, which are very, it's been a while since I took my statistics courses, but I did take them. It doesn't look significant to me. 4.02, 0.399, and 0.468. Is there really a significant deviation there? Question for Dr. Hanley.
Yeah, no, I would not have and I did not create a chart that included the effectiveness average score. And the reason I didn't is because if you have a 5 plan, it averages across 5. If you have a 7 plan, it averages across 7. So these are not comparable. So what I would say is,
How significant are those differences in those 3 in that effectiveness column?
I would not, you can only compare like districts to like districts. So
Okay,
Plan C7, Dahl, June 7, and Pope 7 can be compared. And it's the Pope 7 scores higher, but you know what? I wouldn't concentrate on that. I would say,
Okay.
I would look at those 3 districts and then I would consider other things. I would look
All right.
at things that matter to you guys. Like,
I want to know, I want to weight that. You've answered my question, thank you. But I want to weight that against I'm not speaking for the MMD, but I'm speaking for me, against the number of municipalities. And that's a judgment call.
no. So first you look at voting.
I want to put more in my decision-making process. I want to put more thought into not minimizing splitting municipalities. And then when I look at the effectiveness, I'm saying that really doesn't change much.
I'm afraid you have to look at it the other way around. You have to look at effectiveness first because you have to make sure you don't violate the Voting Rights Act. And then you look at something like municipalities. So
okay,
I would look at the plans and see which offer the most likely to comply with the Voting Rights Act. And on that basis, I've come up with 3 plans. And then I would say, now what other things matter to me? And if splitting municipalities matter to me, I would look at those 3 plans and I would say, well, Pope 7 splits less municipalities, if I'm reading this chart correctly, than the other 2 plans. But the order is what complies with the Constitution, the Voting Rights Act, and state law, and then what other things matter to me. But the first thing is what comports with the law, and then what comports with what I think are other traditional redistricting principles.
if
like
we were to select an effective, if our of the three an effectiveness of 4.68 versus an effectiveness of 3.99. Are we in a have a problem with the Voting Rights
No,
Act?
no, no, we are not.
No, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Donna?
Yes, during the discussion yesterday, and I know that we looked at, there was discussion about going across three municipalities. And I know for the conversation around Colony, I think Pretty said that they could kind of tweak that so that there was some discussion around that, because I know that Colony was one of the municipalities that was involved.
Yeah. I just wanted to take a minute to explain the municipalities. And the municipalities is not necessarily a split, if you would. It's just saying that we are going into another municipality.
Yeah,
So
well,
here,
Right.
so
Split it
here in Plan C, we are, it really goes into Manans, and then there is a very small part which goes into Colony. And if you decide to choose whichever plan, we can always take away that and try to stay within two municipalities. And wherever it says one, that means they are strictly in the city of Albany, but the other ones are Manans and Colony. And the same with Dahl's map, he's picking up a small piece of Colony, and so is Plan C, while Pope Plan is just going into Albany and Manans. So depending on whatever you would like, we could look at it one more time, whichever one you choose to go with, and see if municipalities are important. We can try to stay within and make the changes accordingly. But now the neighborhood splits I thought was more important, because you have all these neighborhoods which are really considered communities of interest. And the less neighborhoods you split, the better it is. That is what we generally apply. And so here, this number seems to be pretty important, because your current plan, which is the as-is situation, just splits only 13 neighborhoods. And then we have some plans where we have 19, 18, 19, 20, and then we have 13. So this is pretty important. And the compactness is, they're all as, I mean, they're comparable.
Could you put Plan C7 up, please?
Sure.
And while you're doing that, can I ask you where did you get your definition of neighborhoods? Is this, these were neighborhoods drawn by the planning department of Albany County, or where did the neighborhoods come from?
They came from the county, and it's a layer called the neighborhood associations. So I'm going to put up Plan C. Is that what you wanted?
C7, yes.
Okay, okay. Let me see. Plan C goes into 3 municipalities, Manans, and then, oh, I'm not sharing. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. There is this little part of colony that I was talking about in Plan C, which, you know, if it's important, we can always work around it and
Yeah.
not use it.
Mm.
Is that a block over there that you let me know?
Yeah, there is just some tiny area that we
Okay.
picked up.
Mm.
Yeah, which we can definitely, you know, if that is an important thing, then we can not use that and use something else if we need it. But clearly it is going into Manans.
Okay, does anybody else have comments, questions?
So all of the plans that have 7 proposed districts, they show 5 likely and 2 possible.
That is correct.
The question is, how do we narrow it down to which one is the one we're going to select? And from what I'm hearing, we have to start with effectiveness. So since all 3 of them have passed the effectiveness test, the next question is, what other tests do they need to pass and narrowing it down?
And I had one clarification question on the population deviation. The numbers that we're looking at, average population deviation, are those the deviations from the ideal district population size, so that just looking at this, the current, well, let's say Plan C, the districts are 0.23% below the average district population. Is that correct, Priti?
Yeah, what you're seeing here is that this is because we have 7 districts, right? We looked at the population deviation from the ideal population for each district, and we just averaged it out so that we could report one number.
No, actually, that's not the way that you do it.
Mm.
When the state passed a law that said you can't deviate more than, what is it, 5%?
5%, well,
You have
5%
to
from,
add the smallest district and the largest district together and get the total deviation, because that's what the 5% is off of. So if you actually just average that, that's not very useful. What you need to do is take the smallest and the largest and add them together to get the total deviation to reflect what the law says.
Yeah, Dr. Handley, that what you're saying is absolutely right. But that would happen when we are looking at all 39 districts, and that deviation should be less than 5% maximum deviation. And what we did look was for each district, it had to be under 2.5%. So we did
from the
that.
average.
And then we average was a number that we reported. I can show you the exact data. Let me open it up real quick. So here, these are for our 7 districts.
We don't see anything yet.
Oh,
Are you
you
sure?
don't? I'm so sorry. I forget to share every now and then. Okay, let me share. So here, these are the deviations that we look at.
I'm seeing a deviation that's minus 3.1. Am I looking at that correctly? Or is that the current plan as opposed to a plan that you drew?
Yeah, I probably have, let me open up the report one more time. Maybe I'm. Okay. Let's look at the report and I'm just pulling it up.
While she's doing that, Dr. Hanley, do you think you can provide us with a summary for the functional analysis that you did for us? That can go along with the charts, because no one else looking at those charts will have an understanding of what those numbers mean.
So
And ultimately, everything is going to have to be provided to the legislature.
So ArcBridge has done that, with the exception of taking out the effectiveness scores or just putting them in for the 5-2. They have created a summary chart.
But their functional analysis charts are part of the record, and there's no summarization of what the data means and what it
Oh,
entails.
you mean a written description?
Yeah, not anything really detailed, just so that somebody looking at it would have an understanding of what the data is and what the numbers mean.
You'll have to ask Jeff about that one.
Dr. Hadley, on your chart, you had 3 columns. One column said very likely, and then the other column just says likely. So how come of the 5 districts that we're looking at, none of them were in the very likely?
So it was very likely to elect if, remember, we looked at 2 different elections. We looked at Democratic primaries in 2018 for the Attorney General and the Lieutenant Governor. If recompiled election results showed that the Attorney General, the Black candidate of choice, who was also the Black candidate, would actually carry that district in both elections, that was a very strong district. Now, that's when you got a 1 in the very likely column. But keep in mind that even in the current plan, where you have 5 districts that are electing, only in one district did the candidates of choice win both elections. And so that one district gets a very likely, and the other 4 districts get likely. And I based that on the number of elections won and the average vote effectiveness. And so if the district was at least as good as the current plan in terms of those 2 factors, it got a likely to elect. So I felt like it was likely to elect. If it didn't do as well, then it only got a possible, because I didn't want you to retrogress or face the possibility of retrogression.
I guess my question is, those elections that you use were, I believe it was the governors or the lieutenant governor?
Lieutenant governor and the attorney general. The reason I chose those was ideally what you would look at is you would look at a citywide election. You can't look at a council election. You can't look at a county council election because it doesn't extend beyond the boundaries of the current district. So you have to look at that something that's citywide. But you don't have any citywide contests that were polarized. Your one citywide contest that included a Black candidate, everybody voted for him. He's been in office for 20 years. So I went, yes? So
I'm wondering, didn't we have a citywide election where Charlie McLaughlin ran against the mayor, but we couldn't use that data? Remember, there was a mayoral election where we had a Black candidate running against a white candidate. Of course, the mayor won.
1 minute, I'm in a Zoom
that was
meeting.
a city election and I need a county election.
Oh, you needed a county election and not a city election.
Did you get my message on that restaurant?
Excuse me?
Nick, you need to mute your phone.
I got it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Because I was just wondering why we just have in all 5 of those districts, we have likely, but not very likely. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. That just gives us all of our districts saying, well, we can't say that they would.
No. Likely is probably likely. It's better than 50%. It's only when you get down to the possible that it's not as good.
Okay.
So a total likely to elect means that those districts are at least as solid as the districts that currently are electing.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I need a clarification because you said that that I should ask Jeff about a summary of the functional analysis. This is for Dr. Hanley.
So I haven't written anything up. All you have is my table, which was then put into the table that ArcBridge produced. But I haven't written any words up.
Yes.
Well,
So you don't do so you don't do a report, like a write-up of your final analysis?
the table that ArcBridge used was your summary table, but you gave us twice 2 whole charts with numbers.
And the summary of those charts is what you need to focus on, and that's what's in the ArcBridge table. They took my summary chart that's at the bottom of those 2 charts and they put it here.
I think what we can use.
Yeah,
can
but
help
the data that you put together it becomes part of our work product, which becomes the property of Albany County. And so somebody looking at those charts, they would see a summary chart at the bottom, but they would really have no understanding of what that data means.
Lisa, could you just write up in a paragraph what the chart includes?
I mean, I'm not looking for anything really detailed, just some.
Oh, Jeff knows what the problem is, Jeff. No, Jeff already, no. The last 20 hours that I've put in here are
Just the methodology.
Jeff, it's going to take me more than a couple of hours. I'm sorry. This has all been gratis this last month.
I'll talk to Marie about the contract situation.
I feel like it's more than, if you want a written description, this is going to be like a day's worth of work, because I think that you need a solid written description. If the idea is that you want to put this in the record, I want to put together a report that is understandable to somebody who hasn't listened to me talk, but could just read it.
Well,
Wow.
I mean, I guess we could take this conversation offline. But I think if information is presented, then it should be clarified in some way so it could be understood.
I certainly would
Away from
support whatever it takes to get things done. If we have to go back to modify a contract, we certainly can discuss that, and I would be supportive of that.
Well, I mean,
I
we
think most people would
can
be.
take a conversation offline, but
Okay,
I mean, I don't think we can end up turning over documentation, which would prove meaningless to somebody who's trying to understand it. Are you ready, Pretty?
I am. I just want to show how I've done it, and then Dr. Handley and Jeff can say. So here, and I'm just pulling it for one of the plans that we did. So if you see my screen, I got the deviation and the deviation percent, and that on that chart, I'm just presenting the average.
What
Is
would be a
that-
lot more useful is to have two columns and tell us the smallest district, which is at minus 2.4, and the largest district, which is, well, these are all underpopulated.
Okay, we can do
But
that.
does that really matter for the MMD since it really has to go across the whole 39 districts?
Absolutely, it does, yes. Now, this plan is fine. I mean, there's nothing here to raise any flags, but the average doesn't tell you that you actually have a district that deviates at minus 2.4, and that is important for the bigger plan. But I
That
mean,
is
you can
correct.
include the
That is-
average too, but I mean, this plan is fine, but you need more information. You need the smallest district and the largest district.
That's correct.
Or the other thing we can do is to just look at the districts and see if they all meet the criteria of being under 2.5%. And we can put a number there. So say, for example, if it's a 7-district map, we can say that all the 7 districts, the 7 districts meet the 2.5% criteria.
The problem with that is it's unlikely to happen, but you could draw a plan if the rest of the districts, there's one that deviates by, -3, then you can't deviate by that much. So you actually need more information than that. So you could include the average, but these are all underpopulated. So maybe you just need to report the most underpopulated district. So the average and the most underpopulated.
Yeah, but we also don't know yet for the other districts that the commission is working on what their range is. So these numbers may need some tweaking later on.
Pretty?
Yeah,
That 8073 number, I don't think that's the right number. The right number is 8105. I think that was the number before the state adjusted data.
Yeah, it has to be based on the state adjusted data.
yeah, it has to be 8105. Yeah, I'm going to double check the population deviation.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can look into
I
it.
just wanted to point that out. Do you have anything else, Pretty?
No, I don't have anything else other than if you have any other comments on the chart that we have the municipalities, we have the neighborhood splits, we have the average compactness score. Other than that,
And, these once you're depending on which direction you are moving toward, you can always tweak the final map a little bit to match up, be completely compliant.
Okay, so, was everybody ready to make a selection?
Can we put the choices back up there?
Yeah, 1 second.
Are we gonna discuss how we're prioritizing? Like, I know, like, it's gone offline and back, but are we looking at municipalities as priority? Are we looking at neighborhood splits to go with the effectiveness?
I mean, I think we really have to, look at all of it.
I think it might be helpful if we just went one by one and said which map we were supporting and our rationale for doing so. That might help us.
Okay, Donna, you're up.
Okay. Well, since I have been studying all afternoon, my vote is for Plan C. We have the 5 that maintains the 5 districts that we have. It also gives us the possibility of 2 other districts, which was something that Judge Khan mentioned in the Pope decision. So we maintain our minimum number of 5 MMDs. We can possibly expand. I would like to avoid the number of split neighborhoods that comment was raised often in the comments that came from the public. And I just think if we can do better than 19 or 20 split neighborhoods, we should do. I'm not as concerned about the municipalities because I know the one map, the part here in Plan C that's in Colony, that can be tweaked and adjusted. But because we are looking at additional MMDs, we are allowed to go into municipalities. In terms of the average population deviation and compactness, we are within acceptable standards. The only other comment I would have is with respect to representation. And if there's some way we can fix that so that we're not losing those 7 people, that would be great.
Okay, Adrian.
Oh, and let me add that we are compliant with the Voting Acts the Voting Rights Act, and with state law as well.
Adrian?
I'll go along with everything Donna said.
You want to elaborate?
Plan.
Because she picked it, or?
No, because I was looking at Plan C and it talked about having the 5 districts with a likely of 2 more. So that's it.
They're all likely to have 2 more.
Well, I just picked that. I'm saying I had chose Plan C from the beginning, so I'll just stick with that.
I lost my connection. How did you vote? Which plan?
Plan C.
Okay, thank you.
Larry?
Wait. Hold on.
You're on mute, Larry.
I said I too was looking at Plan C, but my thing was, of the 3 that we were looking at, I was looking at the neighborhood split, and I see where Plan C has the neighborhood split of about 13, and the other 2 have 20 and 19. So I kind of figured that we wanted to have a neighborhood split, the smallest neighborhood split we could have. As far as going into the other districts, I think, is that the one I'll have to go back and look at my map, but when I looked at it, is that the one that's taking a small piece of Colony?
Yeah,
Plan C, yes.
yeah,
Okay,
a
so
very small place.
that's taking a small piece, but I'm not really sure about us going into Manans and taking all of that of Manans, but I guess they all are going to do some portion of Manans. But my main reason in looking at this table was the neighborhood split.
Okay, thank you. Nick?
Yes, when we started, I was leaning towards the Pope district. And I certainly want to, after listening to the discussion and the answers to my questions from Dr. Hanley about the measurement of effectiveness and so on, and I guess we can get the little piece of Colony taken care of. It's not significant to me. I can support the Plan C and moving forward. I will say that I hope, Jeffrey White has been very, very informative and very strong in his opinions as to the legalities and what will pass muster in terms of the courts. And I would hope that once a plan is developed, finalized, and presented to the county legislature, that he will be there to lead the discussion on the legalities and why we should create, 7 districts and the reasons therefore. I'm not sure exactly what the county legislature's training and in service on this whole matter has been. And I'm hopeful that when we get to that point of presenting a plan with our 7 districts, that we're there to present it and explain it and simply not be in a defensive mode. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Connie?
Yes, I'm in favor of Plan C. I like the fact that it does comply. It's in compliance. Plan C was also my second preferred map back when we selected Plan D. And I kind of kept that in mind, and it's been clarified even more. And I also like the fact that it lessens or has the smallest number of neighborhood splits. And I figure that the smaller that number is, the better it is. Not so much even the municipalities, even though I think it's one. So I'm in favor of Plan C.
Okay, thank you. Kashana?
So I am also in favor of Plan C, and I'm going to try to say things that weren't said earlier as well. I also sat with these maps for quite some time. I have a lot that I documented on it, but I will say that I chose Plan C because just to echo the 13 neighborhoods splits is also reflective of the same number that the current MMD has. It may not be the same splits, but it is the same number that the current MMD districts hold. Although it does cross over 3 municipalities, I think it's also reflective of the diversity of Albany County, and being that we're focused on fair representation for minority residents. I think that it's just showing that there needs to be representation outside of just the city of Albany, but also in other towns and municipalities throughout Albany County. I was concerned. I know I raised a lot of questions about how many people are we losing, or will lose representation. So I am still concerned about that. Let's see. And then I was concerned, I did have concerns earlier going into this about how many people, the number of voters that were Black and Hispanic in District 3. The number, I know, but we had a discussion earlier that changed my view on that because it was under 50% when I looked at that earlier. But those are my comments. But yes, I'm supportive of Plan C.
Okay, so I was really torn between Plan C and the Gwynn Pope map. The thing that concerned me the most about the Glen Pope map were the neighborhood splits. But I like the idea of limiting the number of municipalities involved. I also thought the Gwynn Pope map, the, I guess, variation between non-Hispanic, Black, non-Hispanic, white, and Hispanic in her maps, I felt like her numbers were stronger. In at least 4 of the districts, I felt her numbers were stronger. But the neighborhood splits really concerned me, and I think we have had a lot of feedback relative to splitting communities and splitting neighborhoods. When I consider like most of the feedback that we've gotten and where the majority of that feedback fell. I'm also concerned about going into Manans,
Yeah.
but I also recognize that we get population out of Manans, and if there's people there that we can provide additional representation to, we should. I don't know how we, how we not do it. So I'm going with Plan C. Because even though the numbers in some of the districts concerned me, but the combination of non-Hispanic, Black, and Hispanic preserves representation. I'm a little bit concerned about what happens down the road as the population continues to grow and we have more Hispanic candidates also running for office, what kind of split that might create. But I'm going with Plan C. And so the ask is that we take another look at Plan C and see if there's places where we can tweak it to make it a little better. To take away that loss of representation for those few individuals. To possibly look at whether or not we can come out of one of the municipalities that we went into. So I think we, take a final look at it to see if there's a way that it could be tweaked in a way that doesn't totally change the nature of it, but improves it. And then I think we go from there. we'll need to present it to the commission, and there'll probably be a discussion about whether or not there needs to be another public hearing. And then we'll go from there, and we'll continue to work on putting together our report.
Marie, what I was going to do was look at Plan C one more time, look at the 7 people that inadvertently we had removed from the MMDs. Let me clean it up a little bit, and then later on send you a detailed map so that you can review. And if you all have any concerns, or if you would like any tweaking, we'd be happy to do that.
And please check the population base number with adjusted data, and
Yeah.
also the average population would be
Deviation.
2.5% under. So we have that column as well.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we'll do that.
Dr. Hanley, is there I guess a level of change that you would be concerned about relative to maintaining those effectiveness numbers?
So let's just make sure that the tweaks don't affect the 5 likely to elect and the 2 possible to elect. But, if there's small tweaks, I can't imagine that it would matter, but let's just take one last look at that just to make sure that the tweaks don't affect that.
And from my end at this point, Marie, I don't think I shared with you the draft I worked on for the report. So I will send that to you. Also, you and I should talk about Dr. Hanley's report, because if it takes a day's worth of work, I need to get a cost quote on that, and take that the next step. Also, I might not be available to meet Saturday morning.
So relative to that, Jeff, you were also going to provide me with an invoice related to Dr. Hanley's work.
I'll for the previous work, I will. I'll update the invoice I sent you a while back that I don't think we acted on yet.
Yeah, I don't think there was any detail in there relative to her work, though.
Okay.
That was something that we discussed as a
Yeah,
separate.
I should be able to do that over the weekend, basically just to outline in an invoice that the detailed work that was done.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have anything that we need to talk about tonight, or that we should talk about? Any remaining questions, discussion, anything? If not, this is my favorite part. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
I
that
so
we-
move. Okay, I'll take it back. You go ahead, Kashada.
I move that we adjourn
Go
this
ahead.
meeting.
And when is the next meeting?
I second the motion.
Okay, it has been probably moved in second that this meeting be adjourned. Relative to a next meeting. Pretty, when do you think y'all will have something for us to look at relative to taking a second look at map C and cleaning it up and tweaking it?
Yes, Saturday, we should be ready for the Saturday morning meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't guarantee I'll be there Saturday.
Okay, just let me know. Thank you, Dr. Hanley.
Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome.
Thank you,
Right.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
All
you.
right, everybody.
Thank you.
I would say breathe a sigh of relief